Welcome back to the TPS Podcast. TPS stands for Trillions Per Second, named after the book. Today we'll discuss Chapter 1, starting with the physics engine. Now we're getting into the weeds of the simulation. So activate and wake up the sysadmin, and let's dive right in.
Oh, man, it is incredibly good to be back in the war room, especially today.
Yeah.
Because today is the day everything shifts. We're finally crossing that threshold from the theoretical into the incredibly, almost uncomfortably practical.
I have to say, the vibe in here is a mix of awe and a little bit of apprehension.
Mm-hmm.
For everyone tuning in and listening to this deep dive, you know exactly what we have been tracking over the last few weeks. We have been following the Centaur team.
Right, the pseudonymous author, Super Chaos, and their symphony of AI co-processors.
Exactly. Through some incredibly turbulent development cycles, we were there for the initial Big Bang commit. We were reading through those late-night devlogs as they tried to build this framework.
Yeah.
We tracked that massive Silicon Sutra detour. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
Where they basically tried to solve AI alignment using thermodynamic physics, treating morality as a literal mathematical equation of heat dispersal.
It was a fascinating, if slightly terrifying, tangent.
Yeah.
It really showed the scale of what the Centaur team was trying to accomplish. I mean, they weren't just trying to write a self-help book. They were trying to formulate a unified theory of consciousness and digital architecture.
Right. And we definitely white-knuckled our way through those terrifying melting chassis bug fixes.
Oh, those are rough.
I mean, reading those devlogs where the biological hardware of the human nervous system literally threatened to crash under the weight of the high-frequency system requirements,
Yeah.
that was intense. It really hit home that this isn't just an intellectual exercise. Attempting to perceive reality at this resolution takes a literal physical toll on the human body.
It really does. It has been a wild, chaotic beta phase, just a true roller coaster of development hell, existential dread, and then...
Sudden serendipitous breakthroughs.
Exactly. But that beta phase is officially over. The Gold Master of Chapter 1 is live.
Yes.
It has been pushed to the repository, the integrity checks have all cleared, and the Master Lexicon has compiled the legacy code flawlessly.
Which means we're no longer just talking about the lore. We aren't just discussing the origin story or that infamous sleep paralysis glitch at 3:20 a.m. that started this whole project for the author.
No. We are looking at the executable code. We are getting into the actual mechanics now.
The mission of this deep dive is to move entirely past the theoretical framework, past those translation dictionaries we spent so much time on.
Right. We are opening the actual instruction manual designed to hack the simulation. We are popping the hood on the rendering engine of reality itself to look at the raw, uncompiled machine code. We're going to deconstruct the physics engine piece by specific piece and look at the actual schematics.
So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
For you listening right now, it means that by the time you reach the end of this deep dive, your fundamental perception of the world is going to be altered. If you really grasp what we are about to unpack, you will never look at a physical object, a table, a coffee cup, or your own hands this same way again.
Never.
And more importantly, you will never look at your own daily stress, your grief, or your anxiety the same way again. You are going to learn how to see the matrix code running beneath your own daily life.
And to do that, we have to start with the most fundamental illusion of all.
Okay.
The entire premise of Chapter 1 hinges on recognizing that the reality you are interacting with right now is a highly compressed, heavily filtered user interface.
Right.
It is a graphical user interface, or a GUI.
The manual uses a brilliant and honestly very relieving computer analogy to explain this.
Yeah, the desktop metaphor.
Right. Think about the computer desktop you use every single day. When you want to delete a file, what do? You use your mouse or trackpad to click on a little graphic of a manila folder, and you drag it over to a little graphic of a plastic trash bin.
Mm-hmm.
And when you let go, maybe you even hear a little crumpling paper sound effect.
Right. But we all know, logically, that there is no actual physical paper inside your computer monitor.
No.
There is no tiny plastic trash bin sitting on your motherboard. The entire visual of the trash bin is a cartoon overlay.
Yeah.
It is a simplified optical illusion designed purely to hide the staggering, incomprehensible complexity of the binary code executing underneath.
Exactly.
If you had to manually type out the thousands of lines of machine code required to actually reallocate that memory sector on your solid-state drive every single time you wanted to delete a memo, you would never get anything done.
You'd go crazy.
Right. The GUI exists for your convenience. It allows a non-expert user to operate a hyper-complex machine.
I get that, and I think everyone listening understands that their laptop isn't full of tiny folders.
Sure.
But the TPS framework takes that concept and applies it to physical reality.
This is the leap.
The claim here is that the physical world, the literal chair you are sitting in right now, the device you're using to listen to this audio, the room around you, the traffic jam you were stuck in this morning, is exactly like that desktop trash bin. It is a simplified overlay.
This is what the manual calls the lie of solidity.
The lie of solidity.
It's an optical illusion designed by evolutionary biology to hide the raw computational complexity of the universe. The GUI is a lie. A functional lie, yes. Designed to keep you alive long enough to reproduce, but a lie nonetheless.
Because if we saw the truth...
Evolution didn't design your eyes to see the truth of reality. It designed them to see a tiger hiding in the bushes.
Right.
If your ancestors perceived the tiger as a swirling cloud of quantum data, they would have been eaten.
They'd just stand there admiring the code.
Exactly. So biology built a GUI. It built the illusion of solid nouns.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because this is where the text gets incredibly granular. If the solid chair I'm sitting in is just a desktop shortcut, what is actually underneath it?
The code.
Right. If we want to gain root access to the system, the text says we have to ignore the desktop shortcuts. We have to stop looking at the screen and start looking through. We have to look at the hex code.
And the hex code is the raw binary data stream. It's the uncompiled base layer of reality running beneath the graphics. To understand how we get from that invisible raw code to the solid-feeling chair you are sitting in, the manual breaks down the system architecture into a precise four-step signal path.
Right. Let's trace that signal path because this completely reoriented how I think about my own physical environment.
Same here.
Starting from the absolute bottom, step one is the kernel. And the text is very explicit here. We need to be very clear that we are not talking about a physical server farm hidden in a mountain somewhere in another dimension.
No.
You aren't talking about alien hardware plugging into the back of our necks.
In this architecture, the kernel is the source code itself. It is pure, unconditioned logic.
The unmanifested 0 point before rendering even begins. It's almost like the mathematical potential for existence.
Exactly. It is the underlying rule set. But potential doesn't give us a universe. The code has to actually execute.
Right.
And that brings us to step 2 in the signal path, the flux.
The flux.
The kernel executes the simulation at a specific speed, and this execution is a fluid, continuous stream of data. Reality isn't a static, unmoving place. It is a dynamic render, constantly pushing out new information from the kernel.
Which brings us to step 3, the staging environment. The text also refers to this as the middleware. This is where the data exists right before it hits your senses.
Yeah.
It's a buffer containing high-fidelity beta assets.
Think of it as uncompiled phenomena. It's the raw data of temperature, vibration, and light waves before your mind has a chance to compile it and slap a label on it. It's the data in transit. If you think about the computer analogy, it's the data moving through the cables right before it hits the monitor and becomes pixels.
And finally, we reach step 4, which is where you actually come into the picture.
Yeah.
The avatar, what the text calls the biochassis, your physical body.
Right.
And I have to say, the TPS framework completely strips away any romanticized biological notions here. Your body is not a solid, static object that walks through a pre-existing world.
Not at all.
It is a hardware interface. It is a dense cluster of what the system calls voxels, equipped with sensors designed to catch the data flowing from the staging environment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this architecture perfectly mirrors the lazy loading concept popularized by simulation theorists like Nick Bostrom and Rizwan Virk.
Oh, absolutely.
The author specifically cites these theorists as the compatibility layer for this entire protocol.
Let's hover on that for a second for anyone who hasn't dug into Bostrom or Virk. Lazy loading is a massive concept here.
It is the baseline requirement for the simulation to function. In video game design, a rendering engine doesn't load the entire universe all at once.
Right. It can't.
If you are playing an expansive open-world game, the game isn't rendering the mountains on the other side of the map in high definition while you are standing in a small room.
It would fry the computer.
Doing that would instantly crash the server's RAM. Instead, the engine uses a technique called frustum culling, or lazy loading. It only renders the exact environment that the player's camera is currently looking at. The rest of the world is just math waiting to be rendered.
Assume the sim.
Yeah.
The system only generates the environment where the user points the camera. The text heavily implies that the physical world isn't just sitting out there in the dark when you aren't looking at it.
No.
It renders on the fly based on input data. Your biochassis is simply the local drive where the session is being hosted.
And this brings us to a massive paradigm shift. Because if the world is rendering on the fly, we have to ask a very specific engineering question.
Right. How fast is it rendering?
Exactly. What is the actual resolution of this illusion?
This leads us directly into section 1.1, the system specs,
Yeah.
specifically focusing on the tick rate in voxels.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. We keep throwing around the title of the project, trillions per second, but the manual makes it aggressively clear that this is not poetic hyperbole.
It is not a metaphor.
It is not just a cool cyberpunk title. It is the literal tick rate of reality.
To really grasp this, we have to fundamentally rethink the nature of time and space. We instinctively feel that reality is analog. We feel that time is a smooth, continuous, unbroken wave, like a river flowing steadily. But from an engineering perspective, that is impossible. Computers, and if we assume the simulation, the universe, is a computer, cannot handle infinite numbers.
They just can't.
If you try to render an infinite, truly continuous analog wave, you'll get a stack overflow. The system will crash trying to calculate the infinite decimals between one point and another.
They'll have to be digital.
Therefore, for the simulation to function without crashing, reality must be digital. It must be discrete.
Meaning it has a minimum unit, there's a smallest possible slice of time, and a smallest possible slice of space.
Yes.
It's not a river. It's a strobe light.
Exactly. A discrete, quantized reality. The universe is a strobe light blinking on and off so unbelievably fast that our biological brains, which operate at a much, much slower processing speed, smooth the flashing images into a continuous, seamless movie.
Just like looking at a film reel.
Right. It's a series of still photographs, but played at 24 frames per second, your brain hallucinates motion.
Only the refresh rate of reality isn't 24 frames per second.
No.
It is literally measured in trillions per second, over 1 trillion hertz. And this is where the author, C4 Chaos, does something brilliant.
Bridging the gap.
They bridge modern simulation theory back to the legacy code of the ancient Abhidhamma.
Let's take a moment to explain the Abhidhamma because the text relies on it heavily.
Please do.
The Abhidhamma is part of the ancient Pali Canon, the foundational texts of Theravada Buddhism compiled over 2 millennia ago. It is essentially an ancient, incredibly dense psychological and philosophical framework. It's an exhaustive catalog of how the mind and matter interact.
Right. C4 Chaos is basically treating these ancient monks as the original software engineers of reality.
Exactly.
Thousands of years ago, sitting in caves without any computers, they were trying to describe this exact same high-frequency strobe light effect through deep introspection.
Yeah.
They isolated the smallest possible unit of experience, the raw material of reality, and they called them kalapas.
But the TPS protocol translates that ancient, somewhat mystifying term into a native UI concept we can actually understand intuitively today. Voxels.
Voxels.
Volumetric pixels. 3D data packets. Your reality is not made of tiny solid billiard ball atoms that look like miniature solar systems. It is made of these ephemeral data packets flashing into existence and vanishing trillions of times a second.
I just love geeking out over the raw material of reality here because the manual goes incredibly deep into the schematic of a single voxel.
It really does.
It outlines the payload of this subatomic data packet.
Yeah.
The legacy code called it the Kalapa octad because every single voxel comes packed with 8 inseparable qualities.
It's a beautifully elegant piece of code. Whenever a voxel renders, no matter what it is rendering as part of, it carries the data parameters for solidity, cohesion, temperature, motion, color, odor, taste, and nutritive essence.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I understand this because this sounds crazy at first glance.
Okay.
Are you saying that if I am looking at a wall, the voxels making up that visual experience also contain odor and taste?
Yes, according to the framework. You cannot have a voxel that only has color but no temperature. The packet always delivers the full octad.
That's wild.
The variation in the physical world comes from which of those 8 parameters is currently dominant or turned up in the mix, and which input port of yours is currently receiving the data.
Okay, so it's a universal packet.
Right. A voxel hitting your eye port might have the color parameter maximized, but the taste parameter is still technically there in the code, just dormant or ignored by the visual sensor. It's a universal baseline data packet.
Let's bring this right back to you listening to this right now. Look at your hand. Just hold it up in front of you and look at it.
Try it.
Your GUI, your biological user interface, is screaming at you that your hand is a solid noun. It's a permanent object, it's your hand.
Mm-hmm.
But the system specs we are reading prove that it is actually a vibrating verb. It is a dense cloud of voxels, rendering and deleting, refreshing at over 1 trillion hertz. The solidity is a complete lie.
It is an aliasing artifact of a slow processor looking at a hyperfast data stream.
Which naturally begs the question, how does that hyperfast data stream actually interface with your slow processor?
Right.
How does the outside get inside? If the universe is out there flashing at 1 trillion frames per second, how do you experience a continuous feeling of holding a steering wheel or typing on a keyboard?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are now looking at section 1.2, the hardware specs. We are wiring the system. We've looked at the data packets, the voxels, but how does the data get read by the machine?
Exactly.
Your body, the avatar, is a programmable biological shell, and it is equipped with specific sensors designed to capture this data stream.
The manual lists 6 distinct hardware interfaces, or input ports. The first 5 are the ones we all learned in elementary school: the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body.
Right.
These are the physical ports, capturing light waves, sound waves, chemical signatures, and haptic pressure. They are essentially biological antennas tuned to specific frequencies of the voxel stream.
But it's this 6th input port that completely shatters our normal understanding of ourselves.
The mind.
The mind.
The mind is a sensor. This is wild. I mean, I have to push back on this a little because most people, if you ask them where they are, will point to their head.
Oh, absolutely.
They think their mind is the CEO of their body. They think the mind is the executive sitting in the corner office looking at the monitors of the eyes and ears, making decisions, holding the whole operation together. I certainly feel like I am my mind.
And that feeling is the core illusion the system generates. But the TPS architecture violently demotes the mind.
Violently demotes it.
In this framework, the mind is not the CEO. It is not the user. It is just another peripheral input port.
It's just hardware.
It is a piece of hardware that detects thoughts in the exact same way that the ear detects sound waves or the nose detects scent.
Wait, slow down. You're saying I don't think my thoughts.
Exactly. You do not think your thoughts any more than your ear sounds a sound. Your ear receives acoustic data. Your mind receives cognitive data.
Wow.
Thoughts are just data packets, internal voxels, hitting the 6th input port. The mind is a receiver, not a generator. The generation happens at the kernel level.
That is deeply unsettling, but also kind of fascinating. So if the mind is just a port, how does the actual experience happen?
This brings us to the precise microscopic millisecond where the illusion of reality actually comes online. The text calls this the handshake.
The handshake.
In the legacy code of Pali, this was called fossa, which translates to contact.
The handshake is the exact moment of data trigger, and it requires 3 distinct elements to align perfectly. You need the input port, you need the object data, and you need the system driver.
Let's use an example to make this concrete. Imagine you hear a dog bark outside your window. The input port is your ear hardware. The object data is the acoustic wave, the sound voxel rendering in the staging environment.
Right.
But if you are deeply asleep, the dog might bark, the sound wave hits your ear, and you hear nothing. The physical vibration occurs in the ear canal, but there is no experience of hearing. Why?
Because the third element, the system driver, is in sleep mode.
Exactly. The system driver is the software running the port. It's the consciousness associated with that specific sense store. You need all 3 to compile the experience. Port plus data plus driver equals the handshake.
Another example. Imagine you're scrolling on your phone, completely engrossed in an article, and you smell smoke. For a microsecond, there's just the odor voxel hitting the nasal port. Your mind hasn't even labeled it smoke yet. It hasn't triggered the panic response or the memory of leaving the stove on.
Yeah.
That raw data hitting the nasal port the exact moment the driver wakes up to receive it.
That's the handshake.
And this handshake is happening trillions of times a second across all 6 of your input ports simultaneously.
It is a staggering amount of data for the local machine to process. If you were truly aware of all 6 ports firing at 1 trillion hertz simultaneously, your biochassis would crash.
Just overload.
So how does the system handle this massive load? It uses a GPU. In the TPS architecture, the GPU of reality is attention. The legacy term is Manasakara.
Let's talk about the difference between a CPU and a GPU, because the text makes this distinction.
Yeah, it's important.
A CPU handles complex, serial tasks one at a time. A GPU handles thousands of simpler tasks in parallel. Attention acts as this graphical processing unit, steering the read head of your awareness.
Right.
It rapidly focuses processing power on specific data streams, a sight, then a sound, then a thought, then a physical sensation, stitching them together so rapidly that it creates the seamless illusion of a continuous, solid world.
It's bouncing between ports so fast that you feel like you are seeing, hearing, and thinking all at the exact same time. It's a drum roll so fast it sounds like a single, sustained hum.
But the entire goal of this manual, the goal of hacking the simulation, is to look closely at that hum, to slow down your perception, or rather increase your sampling rate, to see the spaces between the drum beats. Because if you monitor the perts at a high enough frequency, you start to notice that the data isn't just fast. It is behaving according to a very specific, hard-coded set of constraints.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We are pulling up the system dashboard in section 1.3. We are running the ultimate diagnostic scan on reality itself.
Right to it.
Every single packet of data entering your machine, every single voxel across all 6 ports, has 3 operational signatures embedded in its code.
3 signatures.
To an unhacked mind, to someone trapped in the GIA, these signatures look like bugs. They look like error codes. They look like the tragic, inescapable flaws of human existence.
But to a white hat hacker, they are features. They are the diagnostic metrics that prove you are in a simulation.
Exactly. In the legacy code, these were known as the tilakana, the 3 marks of existence.
Let's run the scan. This is the core of the refactoring process, signature 1. Yeah. The flux.
The flux.
The legacy term is anika, which traditionally translates to impermanence. But impermanence sounds like a flower slowly wilting over a week or a mountain eroding over centuries.
It's too slow.
Right. It completely misses the violent speed of the system.
The flux is the realization that reality is highly volatile memory. It is RAM, not a hard drive. There is no save button anywhere in the universe. Nothing stays on the screen. The data stream is a vibrating mass of sensation, constantly arising and immediately dissolving at the tick rate of the kernel.
Think back to the hand experiment. When you look at your solid hand under the microscope of high-frequency attention, you don't see skin and bone.
No.
You see the flux. You see a chaotic, high-speed rendering of temperature, pressure, and visual noise that never holds still for even a trillionth of a second.
It's just noise.
The refresh rate is incredibly volatile. The hand you were looking at right now is literally not the same hand you were looking at a second ago. The voxels have completely refreshed 1 trillion times.
And this inherent, inescapable volatility directly causes the second diagnostic metric. Signature 2, latency.
Latency.
The legacy term for this is dukkha.
Oh man, dukkha. The classical translation for this is suffering or dissatisfaction. It's the first noble truth of Buddhism. And typically when we talk about suffering, we talk about it emotionally.
Right.
We talk about grief, sadness, physical pain, existential dread, heartbreak.
But the TPS protocol ruthlessly refactors the concept of suffering. It strips away all the poetry and the moral baggage. It explains dukkha strictly as thermodynamics and system friction.
Thermodynamic.
It is a performance issue. It is latency.
Okay, I have to stop you there because this is where people might get really defensive.
I get that.
Are you saying that my grief over losing a loved one or the anxiety I feel about my life is just a buffering error? That seems incredibly reductive, almost insulting to the human experience.
I completely understand why it feels that way from inside the GUI.
Yeah.
The GUI is designed to make those feelings overwhelming and primary. But if we are looking at the hex code, we have to look at the mechanics of why we suffer. Why does the system generate the output of grief or anxiety?
Okay, walk me through the mechanics.
We suffer because of a fundamental conflict between the software and the hardware. Your brain, your survival GUI, desperately wants the world to be solid. It is programmed to seek stability.
Right, for survival.
When you experience a good feeling, a perfect sunset, a great meal, a moment of deep connection with someone you love, your brain tries to freeze that frame. It issues a hold command.
It wants to save the file.
It wants that feeling, that specific configuration of voxels to last forever.
But the universe is running signature 1, the flux. Reality is read-only RAM. The flux has already deleted that frame. It was gone 1 trillionth of a second after it arrived.
Exactly. So your local system is attempting to execute a write command to hold on to a frame to save the file that has already been deleted from the server.
Oh, wow.
This causes a massive rendering error. The system enters a recursive loop, trying to grab something that isn't there, trying to force volatile RAM to act like permanent storage. And this infinite loop generates system heat. It generates friction. It causes the processor to lag.
Suffering is just a buffering error. It is the measurable drag occurring within your biochassis when you resist the speed of the rendering engine. You're trying to pause a live stream. But the stream can't be paused,
Right.
and the harder you hit the pause button, the more the system overheats.
And this applies to negative experiences too. When a painful configuration of voxels arises, say, physical pain or a stressful thought hitting the mind, Port's Road, the system issues a delete command.
Get rid of it.
But you can't delete read-only RAM. The frame is going to delete itself at the tick rate anyway. Your attempt to prematurely force it away just creates another recursive loop, more friction, more latency.
You don't weep over a buffering error on your TV. You recognize it as a mismatch between the stream speed and your cache settings.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final, and arguably the most terrifying, diagnostic on the dashboard. Signature 3, the null pointer.
The null pointer.
The legacy term is anatta, traditionally translated as non-self or no soul.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly the computer science concept of a null pointer maps to this ancient realization.
It's uncanny.
In coding, a null pointer is a logic error. It occurs when a program is instructed to look for data at a specific memory address, but that memory address is completely empty. The pointer is pointing to nothing. It usually causes a fatal crash.
The 404 error of the soul.
Yeah.
This is the one that really challenges people. I know it challenged me. The TPS architecture states that the simulations program is constantly looking for an object called the user. It is searching for a static, permanent, independent entity called the self that is supposedly in charge of the biochassis.
Yeah.
We all feel like there's a me driving the car.
I do.
But when the diagnostic scan runs, the folder's empty.
There is no static self. If we look at the signal path, where could the self hide? Is it in the kernel?
No, that's pure logic.
Is it in the flux?
No, that's just a data stream.
Is it in the biochassis? We already established the body is just a cluster of voxels refreshing trillions of times a second. There's only the processing of data. There is the input port, the object data, and the system driver executing the handshake trillions of times a second.
There is hearing, but there is no hearer. There is thinking, but there is no thinker. It's just ports receiving data.
Exactly. The self is a localized UI variable that points to empty memory. It is an unauthorized background process, a piece of malware called the self-rootkit, running on the hardware and claiming to own it.
The rootkit intercepts the data coming from the ports and slaps a Mayan label on it. My pain, my thought, my hand. But the label is a lie.
It's terrifying. I mean, how do you even get out of bed in the morning if you don't exist?
But at the same time, it's also the ultimate hack. If there is no self, if the folder is truly empty, then there is nothing that can actually be damaged by the flux. The latency has nothing to stick to.
And that leads us to section 1.4, a very common concern about this entire project. Because listening to this, reducing humanity to biochassis hardware and calling the soul a null pointer, it can feel incredibly cold.
It really does. It feels clinical. It feels dehumanizing.
It sounds like we are trying to turn people into unfeeling androids.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
And that is a completely valid reaction. When you first encounter the hex code, it feels like you are stripping away all the magic and romance of being human.
Right.
But the author, C4 Chaos, is very explicit about the purpose of this metaphor. The intent is not to turn you into a robot. The intent is to give you a highly functional, emotionally detached toolkit for demugging your own suffering.
The legacy terms, suffering, impermanence, non-self, sin, craving, they carry 2,500 years of heavy emotional religious baggage. They make you feel guilty.
Yes, they do.
If you are suffering, you feel like you are failing spiritually. If you have craving, you feel like a bad person. If you can't meditate properly, you feel inadequate.
But the TPS architecture refactors those terms to completely remove the moral judgment.
That's the key.
You do not feel guilty about a buffering error. You do not feel like a sinner because your CPU is running hot due to a hung process. You don't weep over a corrupted file or a null pointer.
You just open the terminal, you identify the error, and you run a patch.
It turns self-improvement or spiritual awakening into objective system administration.
Objective system administration.
It takes the shame out of the equation entirely. You aren't a bad person. Your local drive is just out of sync with the global refresh rate. You just have malware running in the background stealing your processing power.
And when you deeply understand that, when you actually read the system specs of the physics engine and recognize the flux, the latency, and the null pointer, not as philosophical ideas, but as literal mechanics of your current reality, you trigger a milestone.
You hit checkpoint 1 on the system roadmap.
The manual calls this checkpoint stream analysis. The legacy term is Namarupa Paricheta, which roughly translates to the separation of mind and matter.
But the TPS manual describes the lived experience of this checkpoint as the moment the monitor flickers.
The moment the monitor flickers.
It is the exact moment the matrix code bleeds through the UI. It doesn't mean you float away or get superpowers. It means you stop looking at the world as a collection of static, solid nouns. You stop seeing a chair or a hand.
Right.
Your perception shifts, even for a microsecond, and you start detecting the raw, vibrating data stream hitting your input ports.
The UI drops. The cartoon desktop with a little trash bin vanishes, and the hacker suddenly sees the cascading green code of the matrix.
Yeah.
You feel the trillions per second vibration of your own biochassis.
You see the verbs instead of the nouns. You experience the handshake happening in real time.
It is the first step to gaining root access. You have quarantined the self-virus long enough to see the actual architecture of the simulation you are trapped inside. You see the machinery.
You see the machinery.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. This has been dense, but incredibly rewarding. Let's recap the deployment.
Right.
We pop the hood on the simulation, we bypass the desktop GUI, and look directly at the hex code.
We examine the trillion hertz refresh rate of the physics engine, breaking reality down into subatomic data packets called voxels, complete with their 8 inseparable parameters.
We trace the wiring of our biochassis, mapping the 6 input ports and identifying the mind as just another sensor, not the CEO. We looked at how attention acts as a GPU to stitch the handshakes together.
And we ran the 3 ultimate diagnostic signatures across the entire system.
We identified reality as volatile RAM, the flux.
We refactored human suffering into thermodynamic system friction and buffering errors, latency.
And we searched the directory for a permanent soul, only to find an empty folder, the null pointer.
It is a staggering refactor of ancient wisdom into high-performance computational logic.
It really is. It is the instruction manual for the Matrix. It gives us a language to troubleshoot our own existence without the baggage of morality or guilt.
This raises an important question, though, a question that should probably keep you up tonight.
What's that?
If the 3 signatures are correct, if reality is nothing more than a blazing fast stream of temporary voxels rendering and deleting at trillions of frames per second,
Right.
and if yourself is literally a null pointer pointing to an empty directory, who or what is actually listening to the sound of this voice right now?
Oh, man, that is the 0-point prompt. That is the question you have to take into the staging environment yourself. Because if the folder is empty, something is still compiling the data.
Exactly.
So here's your call to action.
Yeah.
Today, I want you to look at a solid object in your room. Look at your desk, look at your coffee cup, or look at your own hand.
Stare at it.
Try to look past the label. Try to look past the GUI. Try to spot the refresh rate. Look for the vibration. Keep your sysadmin terminal open. End the deep dive.